Hi everybody, today let's look at the validity and soundness of a deductive argument. So here we have three valid forms of a deductive argument. Let's look at form 1. All A are B. C is A, then the conclusion will be C is B. Let's look at this example. All pentagons have 5 sides. Object X is a pentagon, so the conclusion will be object X has 5 sides. Well, no problem, right? This argument. Okay, now let's look at argument form 2. If P then Q. P is true, so the conclusion will be Q is true. For example, if M is equal to 2, then 3M squared is equal to 12. M squared will give you 4. 3 times 4 will give you 12, correct? Right. So the premise 2 tells that M is equal to 2. So the conclusion will be 3M squared is equal to 12. Now let's look at argument form 3. If P, then Q. Not Q is true, then the conclusion will be not P is true. For example, if an integer is a multiple of 10, then the last digit of the integers is 0. So integer of 10 will be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on. You will notice that all these numbers, the last digit, are 0, right? Okay, so this premise, no problem, correct. So the premise 2 tells us that the last digit of integer x is not 0. For example, maybe 13, we don't know, 15, this last digit is not 0. So definitely it will not be a multiple of 10, right? So the conclusion will be the integers x is not a multiple of 10. Okay, it looks pretty simple, but we need to be more careful. Sometimes we might misform an invalid form of deductive argument. Now let's look at this example. All factors of 25 are odd number. So factor of 25 will be factors. Try to think, what are the factors of 25? You learned it in form 1. It will be 1, 5, and 25, right? You will notice that all the numbers here are odd number. So the premise 1, no problem, correct. All factors of 25 are odd number. So the premise 2 tells us that P, there is a number, P. P is a factor of 25. So the conclusion will be P is an odd number. Okay, so this is a valid form of deductive argument. How about this one? Same thing, the premise 1 tells the same thing. All factors of 25 are odd number. So the premise 2 tells us that P is not an odd number. So the conclusion will be P is not a factors of 25. These two are valid form of a deductive argument. So you will notice that when we want to talk about the part here, the part at the front here, we just follow it. P is a factor of 25. And the conclusion will be this part. P is an odd number. But if you want to talk about this part, the part at the back, odd number. So we need to write the opposite form of it. So this is an odd number. So the premise 2, P is not an odd number. So the conclusion will be P is not a factors of 25. This is the valid form of a deductive argument. But if you form it this way, this is invalid form of deductive argument. Let's look at this. All factors of 25 are odd number. So the premise 2 tells us that P is an odd number. You notice that the premise 2 is talking about this part, but it just follow it. P is an odd number. And then the conclusion will be P is a factor of 25. You try to think, is it correct? No. Odd number can be 13, for example, 9, 11, 15, and so on. These all numbers are not a factor of 25, right? So this is invalid form of a deductive argument. Okay, so how about if I form it this way? I write the premise 2 over here. Okay, the premise 1. All factors of 25 are odd number. Now I talk about this part, but I want to write the opposite form of this. All factors of 25 are odd number, right? So P is not a factor of 25. Then the conclusion will be, so we might think the conclusion will be P is not an odd number. Is not an odd number. Is it a valid form of deductive argument? No, this is not a valid form. These two are not a valid form of deductive argument. Try to think. P is not a factor of 25. Let's say P is not a factor of 25. It can be 15, for example. 15 is not a factor of 25. But 15 is an odd number, right? Okay, so remember, when you want to talk about this part at the front here, we just follow it and the conclusion will be this part. So if you want to talk about the part at the back, we need to write the opposite form of it. Okay, so these are the valid form of a deductive argument. Okay, next, let's look at the soundness of a deductive argument. Just now you learned about valid or invalid. So a deductive argument can be valid or invalid. So if it is valid, it can be sound or not sound. If there exists an false premise, then it is not sound. So if all the premises and the conclusion are true, then it will be sound. Okay, so later on I will give you some example. If that is invalid, so definitely will be not sound. Let's look at some example. Let's look at part A. All even numbers are divisible by 2. Okay, so you know, right? What are even numbers? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so on. All even numbers are divided by 2. So the premise 2 tells us that 20 is an even number. So we can make a conclusion about, we can make a conclusion that 20 is divisible by 2. So you will notice that the premise 2 is talking about this part, even number. 20 is an even number. So the conclusion will be this part. 20 is divisible by 2. So this is valid and sound, because all the premises and the conclusion are true. Okay, let's go to part B. All even numbers are divisible by 2. 46 is divisible by 2, then 46 is an even number. You will notice that the conclusion is true. 46 is an even number, right? 46 can be divided by 2. But this is actually not valid. Not valid because it does not comply with a valid form of deductive argument. Comply with a not valid because it does not comply with a valid form of deductive argument. Is that sound? Not sound. Still remember just now where I told you every argument, if it is not sound, then it will be, every argument, if it is invalid, not valid, it will not be sound. It will be not sound. Not sound because it is invalid, or because it's not valid. Okay, so if I want to change the premise to so that it becomes valid, what should I do? I can write this way. 46 is an even number. Then the conclusion will be 46 can be divided by 2, which is this one. So I can say another way. Let's say I change the number 23, or I can write P. Let's say P is not divisible by 2. Let me erase this part first. P is not divisible by 2. Then the conclusion will be P is not an even number. Or I can just give a number, for example, 23 is not divisible by 2. So 23 is not an even number. This is valid form. If you say it this way, invalid. So if it is invalid, then it will be not sound. Let's look at another one. Premise 1. If x is less than 90 degrees, then x is an obtuse angle. The premise 2 say that x is less than 90 degrees, this part, and the conclusion will be this part, x is an obtuse angle. This is valid, but not sound. Why not sound? Because the premise 1 is not true. X is less than 90 degrees. X is an obtuse angle. Is that true? No. If x is less than 90 degrees, then it will be acute angle, not obtuse angle. Okay, so valid, but not sound because the premise 1 is not true. Or you can say the premise 1 and the conclusion is not true. Okay, so be careful. If an argument is valid, it can be sound or not sound. So in this situation, valid but not sound because the premise 1 and the conclusion is not true. If x is less than 90 degrees, and you say x is an obtuse angle, is not correct. X is less than 90 degrees, then x is an acute angle, not obtuse angle. Okay, so in this situation, valid, but the premise 1 and the conclusion is not true. So we say that this is not sound. Okay, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.